Hey everyone, and welcome to Earnings Cheat Sheet for Friday, January 9th. It's Alexis Garcia and Ed Carson here, and we'll be taking a look at some key upcoming earnings reports to help you prepare for the week ahead. And Ed, I know we're probably getting to the border of when I can say this, but Happy New Year to you and to all your viewers out there. I know we're locked in and ready for this quarter. So what do you have on tap for us today?
Yeah, I want to take a look at JPMorgan Chase, Delta Airlines, and Taiwan Semiconductor.
All right, well, let's go ahead and start with JP Morgan, which is scheduled to announce Q4 earnings on Tuesday, January 13th. Earnings for the financial juggernaut are projected to rise 4% to $5 per share, and revenue is seen climbing 8% to $46.1 billion. And here's why we're watching JP Morgan. We'll be looking for signs of investment banking and trading strength. Net interest income will be a key metric there. We'll also be looking for any economic commentary and any discussion on crypto and tokenized assets and equities. And Ed, when it really comes to the story of the financial sector, I think high interest rates were really driving a lot of the profits in previous years. But I think the story for 2026 is really going to be about deal making. And, with the rumors of an impending SpaceX IPO later this year, as well as some other big awaited tech IPOs, I think analysts and investors are really going to be looking for clues to see perhaps how JP Morgan is positioning itself for these massive offerings.
Yeah, I mean, the money center banks have tended to outperform the regional banks because of that capital market stuff, that investment banking, the M&A, IPOs, all that stuff. Though the lending has done all right. We've seen the regional banks come up too because there's that the short-term interest rates have fallen a little bit, the long-term rates not as much, so there's been a wider spread. Yeah, just have to see how things are going and see what they have to say about the economy. I want to see, hey, are the consumers still doing okay? I mean, there might be that K-shaped economy where the affluent customers are doing just fine and others are not. So it'll be just interesting to hear that commentary as well. The earnings have been solid. Maybe supposed to slow down a little bit, in Q4 and in 2026. So that'll be a big thing. Is that can some of the more decent gains we saw for a few years, is that going to slow down a bit?
And looking at the daily chart here, Ed, just get some more analysis on the technical action. But JP Morgan, it hit an all-time high here on January 5th. And it really seems like it's trying to establish itself above this 330 level after a previous breakout back here in November of 2025.
Yeah, and whether you want to consider 318 the buy point or 322, I'd probably be using 322. So it's still in the buy zone either way. And you just have to wait and see what happens after earnings. I mean, it could still be in buy range. It could tumble out of it, tumble or surge out of it. So there might be a buying opportunity, but I think obviously, as we must always say, you want to wait to see what those earnings are at this point, unless you're using some kind of option. But yeah, this has done well. It's made a nice move, since the April lows. I mean, a lot of stocks have. The relative strength has been solid. It's near highs. It hasn't been surging, but it's trended, a little bit higher, and it's basically at highs for the past 52 weeks at least. So, I mean, sometimes they say, well, why go into banks? Why not the S&P? Well, this has outperformed the S&P a little bit at least.
Yeah, and we'll just switch over to the weekly here, Ed. As you mentioned, we see maybe perhaps some decelerating growth here in terms of earnings and in revenue. But again, JP Morgan's been pretty consistent, pretty solid. So, any thoughts here on the weekly chart and the fundamental picture?
Yeah, and you can see it's had a nice uptrend for quite a while, and it generally has outperformed the S&P 500 for quite a while. And there's for quite a time banks weren't outperforming for more than a few months, and so now this has had essentially a three year plus 3.5 year record of outperformance. Can J.P. Morgan and continue? Is that a trend that we're going to have like a decade long kind of trend, or is this like, can we really expect it to outperform any longer? I don't know.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to Delta Airlines, which will report Q4 earnings also on Tuesday, January 13th. Earnings for the airliner are expected to fall 15% to 158 per share, and revenue is expected to tick up 2% to $14.7 billion. And here's why we're watching Delta Airlines. We'll want to see if margin and margin outlook is expanding as analysts expect. We'll also be focused on those higher end travelers. Are they lifting travel, especially when it comes to international travel? And Ed, back in 2025, it seemed like your full service carriers like Delta, like United, like American struggled in comparison to some of the budget airliners like Southwest. But Wall Street seems to have pretty rosy outlook for 2026. I think that's been lifting some airline stocks as of late. And when it comes to Delta, it seems like really that premium first strategy has been paying off. So, what's on your radar with Delta Airlines?
Yeah, I think this is also the first, not just the first airline stock, but it's the first travel stock in a while. So I want to see what they're having to say. And probably, it is so that premium first. Affluent customers are willing to pay up. They are doing things, and others are pinching their pennies a little bit more for whatever reason. That just seems to be the spending habit. So want to get that view. Yeah, there's supposed to be a pretty solid earnings recovery next year after a dip. That's why things have picked up quite a bit. Yeah, there was that sell-off in March and April, but this last run has been as people have gotten more confident about airlines and travel in general. That sector has definitely come on. The group is 28 out of 197. So just, want to see those kind of metrics and what their guidance is for next year, for
Yeah, and
this
Ed,
year. I'm sorry, it's this year.
it's this year. And, when it comes to travel stocks, especially with Delta, analysts are expecting a one time hit to the bottom line due to the government shutdown that
Yeah.
occurred in late 2025. So, just curious how that government shutdown may be playing a factor here, not just with Delta, but airline earnings in general.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be an impact. I think people just sort of shrug that off. And, a lot of the stocks took off around the time the shutdown did. And another big factor, airline stocks have often lagged other travel names because of higher oil prices. But with oil prices being down quite a bit, that's helped given a tailwind. And that's probably another factor. So you can raise prices and one of your biggest costs is down. That can be done. I mean, there's hedging, so they may not see a benefit to this for another 6, 12 months. So, it's not like an immediate thing, but still the idea that fuel prices will be down and your pricing is up is a really nice combination for Delta.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the chart, Ed, because it appears Delta stock is extended from a buy zone. Shares broke above a 62.91 pivot point here out of a flat base back in November. But, like you said, it's had a great run. It briefly flirted with the 21-day line here back on January 2nd, but bounced above that pretty quickly. So, your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for earnings, I suppose somebody could used, that balance off the 20-day line. I suppose if you already own some shares and it clears this area, you sort of treat this as a high handle to this mammoth consolidation going back to the end of 2024. I mean, it's above it, so it's not a handle. Uh, but I would probably be more like an add-on opportunity, I would think. And another way to play something like this is with jets. Is maybe the ETF is that, and Delta is a big name in there, and Jets looks a lot like Delta, and there's a number of others, United, American Airlines, and those will follow in the week or two after Delta. But that's another way to play it where you don't get that individual risks that can happen, especially around earnings season. So I just want to bring that up as if you've got a hankering for airline stocks, that's one way to play it.
Yeah, and just briefly going back to Delta real quick, Ed, on the weekly view here, you can see just this high handle action here, basically going back over the last couple years within this range here. But any thoughts with fundamentals here in terms of the airliner? It seems like earnings have been a little bit spotty over the last 5 to 6 quarters, Ed. Um, but anything jumping out to you in terms of the fundamental picture for Delta?
There's obviously an expectation of margins because you can see the revenue growth might pick up a smidge next year, but we're not, 5, 7% being a little better than some of the quarters, but it's really the earnings, where that's things are going to get leveraged. The one thing is, okay, the relative strength has been impressive the last couple of months, and I guess maybe since March or so, but it really tumbled up. It hasn't had the past several years. It's gone sideways at a very best. I mean, really, it's sort of trended lower from, if you're going back all the way to 2021. So it's flat to lower. that is always an issue. How long can those airlines, they take off sometimes, but they always seem to have to come down for a landing. They
Right.
can't go into orbit and just stay there and outperform.
Very
It
deep,
always
as
seemed
you
to
read.
come back. Yeah,
But yeah, no, I think definitely looks to be in good shape now, but we'll see what this airliner can do.
absolutely.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to Taiwan Semi, which is scheduled to report on Thursday, January 15th. The chip maker is expected to see Q4 earnings up 29% to 283 per share, and revenue is expected to rise 24% to $23.67 billion. And here's why we're watching Taiwan Semi. We'll want to know details about capacity allocation for leading edge chips and how those might play into constraints for making AI chips for companies like NVIDIA and AMD. We'll also be keeping an eye on capital spending outlook. And Ed, I think we all know the TSM, one of the first chip makers to report, a pretty pivotal chip maker within the ecosystem here. Taiwan Semi got a boost from Goldman Sachs, which hiked its price target ahead of earnings here. And analysts do expect these capacity challenges to persist into 2027. But it looks like AI is going to be a multi year growth engine, Ed, as I think for a lot of companies out there.
Yeah, and Taiwan Semi is it makes chips for NVIDIA, AMD, Broadcom. They make them for Apple. So it just sort of feels like no matter what happens, yeah, as long as chips are strong, especially these high-end chips are strong, that Taiwan Semi will be part of it. Like the picks and shovels and the gold miner. May not be the ultimate mega winner, but they should be a winner, assuming that there's strength in there. Uh, there's just sort of that issue, and its capital spending is huge. It matters because it's one of the, along with Samsung, probably the biggest ones out there. Well, that's a huge thing. Chip equipment's been really strong. So this is a huge thing for not just the chip makers or the chip designers like NVIDIA, but also the chip equipment makers. Really, really important report for the sector and as we go forward.
So let's go ahead and dive into the chart because TSM stock did climb to a new high of 333.08 here on January 6th, cleared a range kind of going back here to last fall around August, September. But we can see here attempted to break out of this double bottom base. On December 10th, but quickly retreated and fell below key moving averages. But it's bounced back, Ed. So, how would you play Taiwan Semi headed into earnings?
Yeah, I mean that was tricky. I mean technically that 311 buy point was invalid because it just felt too much. So you could probably still have used it or use the 314 kind of thing as a place to enter. So either way, I would say it's in a buy zone. It's a little above the 50-day line, but not too bad. You could still be doing it if it weren't for earnings, and earnings are coming up. So yeah, we'll just have to see how that goes. And unlike Broadcom and NVIDIA and AMD and Apple, Taiwan Semi is well above its 50-day line. So that's something, and there's some other names. So that's just that's doing pretty well in that regard. The earnings are strong. You can see those strong growth. Yeah, the growth is supposed to slow. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. I think that can they keep up the pace? I mean, they aren't going to. Presumably, they won't keep up that pace. But can they still deliver a really strong growth going forward? Because they had several quarters of accelerating growth that has slowed now. So we're going to go on a decelerating trend, it seems like. So that how much can it move from there? Because it's more than doubled from April. And buying it from way back in late 2022 before all the AI thing really took off, it's an enormous run. Obviously, its earnings have really turned on in the last couple of years, but that's acting. Yeah, the earnings line has really improved, and it's already chip stocks tend to roll over before the earnings line rolls over. I mean, and vice versa. But this one is one of the better looking big chip names.
All right, so still in a potential buy zone, Ed, but we can see how it acts ahead of earnings. Those were some of the top names on our radar, but there's more to look at. A lot of financial names reporting next week. So let's go ahead and start with Goldman Sachs, Ed. That is scheduled to report on January 15th.
Yeah, and Goldman Sachs, that's a little extended from like even the 919 area at this point. I mean, maybe not technically, but that was really short. So it seems like it's out there. This is more investment banking. Investment banking is really this leading. That's why it's been outperforming JP Morgan. And so that will be just interesting to see how that does. This is among the big banks, probably the leader right now.
All right, how about we take a look at BlackRock, Ed, that post earnings on January 15th as well. Basing in a consolidation here, it looks like, again, trying to really establish itself above its 50-day line, but a little bit of choppy action over the last week.
Yeah, alternative assets. They're into like they have iShares ETFs. They're a big Bitcoin ETF issuer. So a lot of things going on there. This one just hasn't done as well. Like it's gone on some runs, but this has been more of a choppy laggard relative to a lot of the other big banks.
All right, how about we jump on over to Morgan Stanley? Again, earnings there on January 15th. And this one looking in much better shape here at above all the key moving averages. So, what are your thoughts here?
Sort of like Goldman Sachs sort of cleared a little short consolidation, rangy kind of area and sort of up from there. It's extended. It's been acting great. Anybody who got into this at a good spot, is doing fine, but I don't see anything that you can really get into.
All right, how about we take a look at Bank of America earnings there scheduled for January 14th?
Yeah, that one's doing quite well as well. This one is more of that broader traditional and investment banking, but this has come on quite nicely and is definitely extended.
Okay, so wait for that one to set up. How about we just jump on over to Wells Fargo, Ed? Again, looking very similar to Bank of America's chart.
Yeah, this one maybe isn't as extended as say Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, but it's still extended. Made a nice run, had some choppy action, but eventually cleared that. A couple of months ago, maybe when it got above the 85 area, sort of made decisively there. Finally cleared a lot of its range, and and has moved out since there.
All right, how about one more non-banking related name, Ed? That's JB Hunt Transportation earnings there on January 15th.
Yeah, the trucking firms finally woke up. I mean, it has been a long time since we've talked about a number of them, and even then, we weren't talking about JB Hunt too often. But this is the first trucking firm to come out, so this group has come on quite a bit in many names, and it's also important to get a sense of the economy, just shipping and goods in particular. This one is sort of at the top of a short consolidation. Chances are it'll move a lot off of that. It's a pretty short one. I mean, this is more of an add-on buy opportunity, and again, earnings are coming up.
And we saw at a nice gap up here after last earnings, and nice to see that it kind of held that ground, finished the handle here within this base, and continued to move forward. So some pretty positive action there for JP Hunt. All right, Ed. Well, those were the earnings, but there's some other big news out there as well. So what else are you keeping an eye on as earnings season kicks off?
Yeah, these aren't earnings, but two huge market moving things would be the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, and then there's the ICR Conference. The JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, a lot of biotechs, drugs, see a lot of preliminary data. We'll see, M&A, drug trial data, and there's other things, we'll probably get, health services, products makers. A lot of movement can be from that conference. And then also we have the ICR conference, and you're going to see a lot of retail and consumer names give maybe preliminary numbers and some other things. So a lot of movement that'll be coming out from those as well. So it's actually a chock-filled week of earnings and earnings related or level news. After several weeks of quiet, we're waking up in a hurry. It'll be a very alert alarm for Wall Street with all this news.
All right, Ed. Well, thank you so much for your insights today. And that wraps it up for this edition of Earnings Cheat Sheet. If you want even more market analysis, be sure to tune into Stock Market Today. That goes live after the closing bell. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you all here next week.